What's up YouTube? This is Debbie, aka Deviant Dreamers, and we're back with the next video in our Gwent tips series. Today we'll be taking a closer look at the Nilfgaardian Empire. As with our previous video where we talked all about the Northern Realms faction, this video will discuss all of the strengths of the Nilfgaardian Empire, as well as some weaknesses that you can use to your advantage in order to best combat this faction. And of course, if this video helps you out and you do enjoy it, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more content in the future. And now for the Gwent topic of the day, the Nilfgaardian Empire. First and foremost, let's talk about our faction ability. With Nilfgaard's special ability, if you happen to tie your opponent in any given round of a Gwent match, you win by default. And while this ability might be very situational and you may not be able to use it very often, it can certainly come in clutch in desperate moments, and there might be times when you can actually strategize in order to use this faction ability to your advantage. For example, if you find yourself in a situation where your opponent has already passed, and you could either play one card to tie the match or two cards for the win, you certainly want to keep that card advantage going into the next round, and you should simply try to play it so that you tie, and ultimately the faction ability will push you through. Next, let's talk about the leader abilities of the Nilfgaardian Empire. These MER cards allow you to cancel your opponent's leader ability, look at 3 random cards from your opponent's hand, pick a torrential rain card from your deck to play it instantly, draw a card from your opponent's discard pile, and restore a random card from the discard pile if you play any medic cards. Now keep in mind, this ability does affect both you and your opponent moving forward. Based on these leader abilities alone, I would consider the Nilfgaardian Empire to be particularly strong against itself and the Northern Realms. The Nilfgaardian faction is able to provide you with a ton of information. And information is incredibly valuable, especially when you play an opponent who has a lot of spy cards or special cards in their hand, such as the Nilfgaardian Empire. Additionally, because the Northern Realms is known for such strong siege units, having the ability to play a torrential rain card from your deck instantaneously is very advantageous against that. In the Nilfgaardian deck, you'll find a lot of solo high-powered cards, some low-level tight bond units, a ton of hero cards, and some high-power spy cards. Of these specialties, I would consider those solo high-powered units to be the most powerful and have the most potential to win matches. Of course, these cards are strong on their own, but when coupled with any boost potential, like Commander's Horn, they can become even stronger, which really poses a threat to your opponent. However, this can also be a disadvantage if used against you. For example, if your opponent plays a Scorch card, and you happen to have some incredibly high boosted cards, that can all be taken away from you within a moment's notice. So the best attempt to counter this is to spread out your points as evenly as possible between combat, range, and siege rows to avoid any influx of weather trying to combat you, but also to spread out your points as much as possible to where you don't have more than one card at a certain point value. And to help further distribute your point values, one of the benefits to this deck is that the 2 strongest non-hero cards are in fact the Heavy Zerrikanian Fire Scorpion, which can be played in the Siege row for 10 points, and the Black Infantry Archer, which can be played in the Range row for 10 points. Now the Nilfgaardian Empire also has a lot of higher power hero cards, which serves as an effective counter against those weather cards again, because hero cards cannot be affected by that, as well as Scorch. However, a disadvantage to the sheer number of hero cards in this deck is that those cards also can't be boosted. So once you play those cards at face value, that is simply the amount of points that you are going to get. Now, my personal suggestion for hero cards and their usage in play is either to take an approach where you are playing all of your hero cards at the beginning of the game to try and gain traction and have your opponents bleed out their hand, or to save those hero cards until the very end of the game for a potential high point comeback. Now, the one disadvantage to the spy cards in the Nilfgaardian Empire deck, as opposed to those in the Northern Realms faction, are their higher point values. But if you play the long round, if you happen to build up their forces in close combat, for example, with your spy cards, and then sneak in a nice little biting frost at the end of a round, it can be a really satisfying win. And lastly, just like we mentioned last week with the Northern Realms faction video, the Nilfgaardian Empire does in fact have some cards with the Tight Bond ability. But I will say that these cards tend to have a lower point value than what we might anticipate from other factions. So for example, while we had some 8-point Tight Bond catapults in the Northern Realms faction, our highest value now with Nilfgaard is a 5-point Young Emissary. So really, while this might be a unique trait of the Nilfgaardian Empire, it's not necessarily one of their strengths. And lastly, let's talk about some strategies to use when playing against the Nilfgaardian faction. First and foremost, it's important to note that your leader ability could have the potential to be cancelled. So do not rely on that going into a game with an opponent who plays with the Nilfgaardian faction if you happen to know in advance, because you just can't rely on that. So if you tend to play with a leader card that affects the weather in some way or doubles the point value of a given row on your side of the battlefield, it would also benefit you to have a backup in your deck as well. So for example, if you would like to play with a certain weather card or use Commander's Horns instead of your leader ability, that might be a good backup. And of course, when it comes to countering Nilfgaardian spy cards, your best friend will be decoy cards. That way you can steal your opponent's spy cards and use them for your own gain. And that's it on the Nilfgaardian Empire. If you have any other tips or tricks that you use when playing with or against the Nilfgaardian Empire, feel free to post them below. We would absolutely love to hear from you. Next time we'll be taking a deeper dive into looking at the Scoia'tael faction. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon! We're also sending a special shout out today to Corey and the rest of the Ko-fi crew for their wonderful continued support. Thank you all so much.